Good evening, Gotham. Good evening, Metropolis, Emerald City, to Xanadu, Babylon, and to the rest of you. What about the ISS? It's to be decommissioned anyway. Besides, there's just a bunch of global elite up there. Now, are they meeting in secret, or are they conducting experiments, or do they just have enough money to piss away that they decided to take a ride into space for a week? Good evening, everybody. I am Scooter McGee. Thank you for joining us for the headlines. It is 4/10 2022. It is National Sibling Day. As a Irish Roman Catholic conservative nationalist and an expat of the Irish Mafia, my biological brother and I we're not allowed to speak. Um, but to my nephew, who will eventually find these in the archives or at the inquest, uh, happy birthday and what is it? Happy National Siblings Day. Find me on the World Wide Web, scootermcgee.com. That site will be up and running here before the end of the month. The old template is still there, and it is what it is, as I have Kevin in FEMA Region 4 working on a couple other projects. Hopefully, if you guys like this and share this and maybe support me on Patreon, the build out can go a little quicker because the bill I got for $1,500, I don't know how I'm going to eat that nut, but I'll work on it. So we got a lot of headlines for 4/10 2022. Let's just go right into this. Um, oh, sorry. We're going to go through this. There will not be on this day tonight. Special thanks, of course. It's after 11 o'clock. No time check. Well, it's after 1 a.m. on the East Coast. It's after 9 a.m. now in Moscow. It is after 3 p.m. in Tokyo. And it is after 10 o'clock in Hollywood Hills. So we got to get in and out of here quick tonight because I'm expecting a phone call. However, um, if you're in Colorado before 11 o'clock, you can get booze delivered. So find Greeley West Side Liquor on social media, give them a call, and get Polish, Ukrainian, Lithuanian, Germanian. There is no Germania. Oh, there could have been. Had the Butcher of Prague had his way, the Butcher of, oh God, okay. You people need to calm down with your Butcher of and the Nazis of and the creation of, because now you're just making up. The latest Russian general is the worst of the worst. Not by the Soviet playbook standards. He's the best of the best. And the last generals in charge were either dropping like flies, disappeared, killed in combat, or have never been seen or heard from again. Because as the media was so desperate in the first 21 days of this Bugada, Kiev, because you can't say Kiev because that's racist, it's genocide, it's derogatory to the people of Kiev. Remember that at the next awards dinner and you order chicken Kiev. You pussy. Language, Timothy. Never a group of more brain dead, narcissistic, shallow, mouth breathing, soulless, scum sucking waste of skin have I ever had the opportunity to be so close and didn't have the coordinates to call in a high yield, low altitude detonation of a fuel air bomb. My uncle doesn't sit second seat at NORAD anymore, so I don't have that pull. He's being called he's being called. You know what? I personally don't give what you call him. He's the Butcher of Syria. On my planet, he's known as the Butcher of Prague. That's Heydrich. Say what else you want. Let's go back in history. You're claiming Mirapol is the new Auschwitz. You go into Mirapol and there's nothing left. The Russians have decimated it. No, the Soviet army did. The West is calling the new Butcher of Syria. I got his name, and I wrote it phonetically. Alexander Dvornikov. Alexander Dvornikov. He's 64 years young, but he's the worst of the worst. This is the same Russian intelligence you've been your inside sources the whole time. And okay, just checking. This continued synonymization and homogenization of World War II and the use of the term Nazi. And again, I've pointed out since this Bugada started every night at 11 o'clock, 1 a.m. Eastern, that the playbook, the Soviet playbook of the 1960s, 70s, and early 80s that seemed to be ignored after Gulf War I was completely brushed aside as propaganda for Y2K and 9/11, let alone Gulf War II, as we deal with our international partners in peace because we're so cluster screwed together with these international trade agreements. The sanctions will deter Russia from invading Ukraine. This, as the Russian army was conducting military maneuvers in Belarus. Then the president says, I never said that sanctions would work. No, all of your surrogates did, giving you plausible deniability, and weren't caught on tape saying it. Then you were caught in a gaffe saying, well, it would depend upon what kind of incursion the Russian army took in Ukraine as the world was watching the Olympics. And it wasn't difficult to see the writing on the wall, Mr. President, if that is your name, Joe Biden, that they're going after the Olympics. And they're going in that 72 to 96 hour launch with that 24 to 96 hour launch window, probably 72 to 96 hours out. Get the diplomats out, get the people out, time it to the lunar cycles. No, they're waiting for the ground to freeze. It's the spring. The ground freezes in the fall, you idiots. Fire. I know you got to peek at my bald spot. Otherwise, you got to go to Google Earth. So all of the gaffes from the Friday Take Out the Trash, Saturday night, last night, I apologize. There was no way I could be in two places at once, and I wasn't going to think that I wasn't going to be able at 11 o'clock to not be in handcuffs. So there was also that possibility. I don't know, but hey, it is Holy Week. His Holiness the Pope from St. Peter's Square. By the way, the video inside the Vatican in the square there, you don't see any masks, do you? Stand by. Release the COVID again. His Holiness Pope Francis, who's already weak and feeble, who last week kissed the flag of Ukraine, is now calling for a truce. Jesus H on a popsicle stick, calling for a truce for Holy Week. The Vatican is talking to the Russian Orthodox Church. Let me know how this works out, will you? The problems with climate change and the severe weather that has been seen in the United States this week will be traveling over the Atlantic Ocean. And there are fears that on Easter Sunday morning, when the stone to the tomb is rolled back, Jesus may not see his shadow, and we may in fact see 6 more years of war in Ukraine. Don't worry about the offensiveness of that joke. Hey, who told you about the bird flu crisis now a month ago? Remember I said wait 3 or 4 weeks, we'll need that story? Well, here we go. You know, there's been a bird flu outbreak in 8 states. NBC News is proud to report in a few states. NBC News said that 11 million birds were killed. When? We were killing 10 million to 12 million birds a day in the first week of March. Second week of March. This is the first week of April. Concerns of high prices with the rate of inflation on eggs at 11%. Are you fucking high? The wholesale cost of eggs has doubled. At the store, a 99-cent dozen, a dozen eggs, large eggs, $1 to $1.29, whether they were on sale or. Look, I do know food prices because I have to eat. The Easter coming up, you may see higher prices at the eggs. Is it worth it coloring the eggs for the children? Uh, a dozen were 99 cents to $1.29. I normally don't get an 18 pack of eggs because I'm single. I'm not allowed pets, plants, or kids. But the 18 packs, sorry, the dozen eggs now are $2.99, and the 18 pack, which makes no sense at all, are $4.99. But they're brown. They're eggs. They're not organic, and they're not. No, 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 no. Stop. Unless you're getting your eggs from your neighbor, stop. Inflation may be at the rate as high as 11%. You just pulled that number out of your ass. Try that again. Where did you get that number? You privy to data that the rest of the world isn't in hopes that it'll be parroted? Like, if you think a leader might be a pedophile, you watch QAnon? I actually heard this too on CNN. There are a lot of Republicans at that Epstein Island. Good. Castrate them and all. Execute each and every one of them. You touch a kid, you die. End of discussion. Seems that the conservative, extreme, right-wing Republicans, all they can do now is call you the worst name. Really? I direct your attention to the lovely and talented Maxine Waters. I direct your attention to the lovely and talented Stacey Abrams. Oh, you think I'm racist? I direct your attention to Hillary Rodham Clinton and what she said yesterday, 4/9/2022, while she's out working on a campaign trail to make herself invaluable to the Democrats during, after, and the midterms, and for the more important 2024 elections. We should really try to get to these headlines. All right. Thank you, Greeley Westside Liquor. It's hiding in the bag. Everybody calm down. Special shouts out to both of the Scotties over at Silver Mountain Jewelry and Pawn. Now, in the meantime, I'm not going to stick the card back on my head because that would be rude and that would be mean. Russians seem to be targeting civilians indiscriminately in Ukraine. Hey, if you're at a train station, guess what? A train station is a military target. You're in the hospital. Good for you. Hospital is a military target. You're in a school. I hate to bring this to your attention. School. Anywhere there can be large mass gatherings and groups and buildings where can provide shelter for the saboteurs in the underground is a target. With 10 million refugees, these are United Nations numbers, kids. We are 47 days into the conflict. 10 million refugees and 10 million homeless. You guys better slow your roll real fast. There's only 41 to 49 million people in Ukraine. Now you're claiming half of them are either gone or homeless. Like how you claimed Mariupol was under siege and 200,000 people fled in a night, in a 24-hour time frame. ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, MSNBC, Al Jazeera, and BBC all reported 200,000. Half the town of Mariupol evacuated overnight, with no follow-up to that. The numbers out of Mariupol: 2,000 dead, couple hundred kids. All right, 5,000 dead, a couple hundred kids. That was a town of 400,000 people. Your numbers aren't adding up. Kharkiv, by the way, is Kyiv was about to fall, as Kyiv was ready to fall. Kyiv is in fear of falling. They had to keep changing the headlines and drop it down because the Ukrainians and the people in the capital city were kicking it out of the Russians. Took almost 3 weeks into the incursion just to find out 498 Russian soldiers are dead. That number immediately by yours truly, because not I'm a conspiracy theorist, but I'm a critical thinker. And I gave very specific reasons why that number was wrong and why they had to create that number, the Russians, because of the number of body bags that are coming home. Then the story of now the Russians are using crematoriums to hide the number of crematoriums. Mariupol is Auschwitz, and the Russians have crematoriums. What's next? A new general has been assigned to the Russian army. Oh my God, he's the worst of the worst. He's known as the Butcher of Syria. Are these people that fucking retarded that they don't know who the Butcher of Prague is? Tell Heydrich I said, hey. Scooter says, hey. Just like many of these inside Antifa and Black Lives Matter, just he was misunderstood. Heydrich was just he. When these people figure out what not my real name, who cares about that? What was your nickname in school? What was your nickname here? They called you what? Again, I was in the right spot at the wrong time with the inability to call in an airstrike. You know how empty, hollow, and shallow I feel? I couldn't serve humanity better. Boris Johnson trying to serve humanity by strolling through the square with President Volodymyr Zelensky in a photo op. Ah, now questions from NBC News. Meet the Press's up Chuck Todd talking with the assistant director of national security, and who gives it away? He was the guy. Hold on. National Security Council director, the assistant director of the National Security Council. NBC Meet the Press. Will we see President Biden in Ukraine? Ah, how fortunate are you to be alive? When did you stop beating your wife? It's because I moved. I need a spoon. I don't have. Stick it right there. The British Prime Minister promising more money and more support. Wait a minute. How can you give what you've already given 110%? I thought the European community was never more strong, never more decided. We're going to give more. Okay, Boris. In the French elections, we do not have a clear winner in the first round because we had a third spoke in the wheel. So between Le Pen and Macron, the boy, again, the other night, the ABC people were all aluminium. They were all European, talking about the aluminium shortage. And now they're developing French accents to support Macron. Okay, another round of elections in a runoff. Tensions high as Macron's opponent is pro-Putin. Ooh, and she's a woman. Ooh, bad. I hope she's married and having an affair so the people of France will trust her. Um, I don't know why they wheeled out former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers under the Clinton administration. We all know recession is coming. The definition of recession is 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP. So your argument of the rate of inflation and the rate of unemployment, when those numbers, you are so full of it's not even funny anymore. And in the world of politics, since you're all a bunch of West Wing freaks and wanting to be the first, and again, the moon shot to cure cancer. Thank you, Rob Lowe, aka Sam Seaborn, through the mouth of Josiah Bartlett. An ultra left liberal out of the Northeast. I don't feel well. Nazis. Mobile crematoriums. Because the Nazis originally used mobile gas chambers. Why use the gas chamber when you still have to clean out the. What if we put it on wheels and we just burn everybody while we drove? And it'd be good for the environment. 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP. And in the world of politics, you don't call it that. You call it anything but. What do we call it? Call it a fucking bagel. I don't care. You don't use that word. Why? Consumer confidence. Do we want to talk about the consumer confidence in the United States right now? The average consumer is no longer believing Putin's war, Putin's price hike, um, because Americans can read where they were 1 year ago today, thank you to Facebook Facebook memories. Concerns around the Algonquin roundtable of panelists and experts regarding the celebratory reason for the season at the White House with the confirmation of the first black woman. I thought we weren't using those words. And the woman who's black, who just is about to put on the robe, can't tell us what the word woman means. Everyone else up and down the line apparently identifies her as a woman because they keep touting the first black woman. 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP, if you're keeping score at home. There were no convictions, as, again, if you watch the Conspiracy Keepers, then you know right where the feds seem to be kind of actively involved in this whole plot to kidnap and possibly do harm to Democratic Governor Gretchen Whitmer, who has one of the, other than Kamala Harris, had one of the worst opinion polling datas of COVID. The jury acquitted 2 and are deadlocked in 2. Boy, did that piss the media off on Friday. Governor Whitmer is very disappointed. She says that this normalizes political violence. Black Lives Matter, bailing out the protesters who were rioting and who injured, wounded, and killed would be correct, collectively hundreds of law enforcement and first responders that you claim to want to protect so much. Multiple officers killed, and more than dozens, hundreds were injured across the United States in a summer of mostly peaceful protests that have cost billions and billions and billions of dollars. How are those mostly peaceful protests? That's not a story I'm interested in covering. I don't think Hunter Biden's laptop has anything to do with anything. Besides, he paid his taxes. They wanted the suspects in the Governor Whitmer case to plead guilty so they could use that as more evidence in the January 6th hearings, which are falling apart. The media is still at a loss as of Sunday noon Eastern, 4/10/2022. How is Kyiv? It's Kiev, you freaks. How are they even still standing? Well, Secretary of Defense and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and members of national security all coming up, pointing out, we are working. These have not worked a day in their lives. We are working hourly. I was just on the phone with President Zelensky 2 hours earlier today for 2 hours, and every weapon and everything they need, we've either delivered or we're delivering or it's coming. Yeah, and I won't do that in your mouth either. Oh my God. You are claiming, the Pentagon and the White House are claiming the reason Kyiv is still standing is because all of the tens of hundreds of millions of dollars and weapons that we've sent to Ukraine in the last 35 days. They're trying to do that with a straight face, much like former President Barack Hussein Obama did with the White House press corps, talking about his speech. Again, I did. Yeah, with the echo in the room again. Um, how tough he was on Ukraine. Are you been kidding me? I I can look it up. See, you found that on a QAnon website. We're gonna have to start shutting this down. You mean like Shanghai? You mean the people of Shanghai literally got shanghaied in their own fucking town? It's 2 weeks to flatten the curve. That's it. 2 weeks have come and gone. The government may have done that to the Chinese people in Shanghai, may have done that to their mouths, but their mouths now are hungry. They've now been locked in their homes. 72 hours ago, a phenomena began in Shanghai. You saw it here for COVID 2 years ago at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock at night, and you'd go out and yell for 60 seconds. And then people started playing instruments and families would gather, social distancing, of course. I'll stand out alone on my patio and wear a mask, and I'll listen to my neighbor play music. They ain't doing that in Shanghai. Joking, let's say use arbitrary numbers. Say there's 10 million living in New York. Isn't it like 30 million? Let's just say there's 10 million living in New York. Let's say there's 50 million living in Shanghai. No, you're exaggerating. All right, 30 million. And they're all, and again, all those huge high rises. That's how they live there. They don't have their 8,000 square foot home with the guest house and two swimming pools, bitching about they need a bigger place. Um, Screaming. See, the West demanding. No, they're screaming. They're hungry. They're confused. They realize they've been lied to. They see the writing on the wall. Well, the Chinese government responded. Thank God. That's what government's for. The government has responded. Send out the drones. No, these aren't the killer ones yet. Send out the drones. The drones flying over Shanghai now, telling people to stop. Where do you think this goes? No food, no vegetables, no rice, water, sanitation. Are flights coming in and out of Shanghai? How are the taxi drivers doing? How are the merchants doing? It's the new variant. 70 to 72 members on Capitol Hill tested COVID after allegedly. They showed up at a dinner, a very exclusive elite dinner. Yeah, where both sides come together and laugh at how they're fisting us sideways with our pants on. Um, 72 of them have tested positive for COVID, including the New York City governor, New York City mayor. Oh, dear God, we should all pray. Let me just check the numbers. St. Peter does love numbers. The new BA2 variant, not to be confused with the very scary XE variant, or is the BA2 variant? Shh, keep them confused. We're waiting for a couple of weeks to get CDC data. Then why are you overreacting now? We've seen major spikes. Although not a super spreader event, the dinner in which the elite congressional dinner, 70 to 72 members did in fact test positive for COVID. President Biden is fine. No, they said Joe Biden is fine. His sister, if the president gets it and will handle, well, excuse me. Oh, you planning on getting him sick now? Remove him, put her in. Some, okay, the story gets better. Yes, British intelligence now informing the West that it appears Russia needs soldiers. When this video is done, it's going to post, and I'm going to give you all the stats. We are just shy of 20,000 dead Russian soldiers. In the original allegations of deployment of 150,000 troops, and that number then later confirmed by other Western sources at 180 to 185,000, the COVID rate has risen 24%. The hospitalization is up in 9 states. Deaths are up in 8 states. Dr. Fauci is now warning Americans that we will see a virus surge this fall. How convenient. We've kicked the can down the road on the kids not paying student loan debt till the end of August, and that'll be September, and here comes your October surprise. And COVID could be on the horizon too. But I remember in the summer of 2020 in the mostly peaceful protests, we were ordered to follow the science, and it was very clear that the protesters were not super spreader events. Um, Calls for an investigation in Santa Clara, California regarding the Home Depot fire, five-alarm fire that appears to be suspicious. So I'm sure there'll be some school shootings or mass shootings this week, or maybe a car chase or two on the 5 or the 10 that can get that story off the top of the headlines. Um, yeah, again, the media just doesn't understand as we're almost 50 days into the crisis or struggle, depending upon which side of the Mason Dixon line you're on. SHTRUGGLE, struggle, struggle. You really got to push that ethnicity, don't you? Oh, and you think the egg shortage is bad right now. Let's see, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Most of you don't even know the life cycle, the span, how you need to breed, and what kind of product you want at the end of it. Um, Wait till May and June, Mother's Day. Oh, grandma's deviled eggs. You let me know how that works out, will you? I love my grandparents. I'm glad they're dead because how they raised me and what they raised me to be and how they raised all of you, they are rolling around in their graves knowing that we rolled over and allowed a government who we're not supposed to trust, who it's not their job to protect us. Their job is to protect the borders and an enemy infiltrating. The enemy is infiltrated at every level and in the level of government. If you disagree with any of their narrative, you are now the enemy. You are now the threat. You are now the target. I wish I had better news. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe not. Thank you to Greeley Westside Liquor. Thank you to Silver Mountain Jewelry and Pawn. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your understanding. This is all a work in progress, and we'll keep doing it until I do wind up in handcuffs or assume room temperature. So be well, be safe, and be very leery of the news, or at least the headlines. Do your own research. And thank you for being a part of the #1 podcast that nobody knows about and even fewer people watch. Good night, Gotham.